Let's speak to Ben Aris in Berlin, the former Russia reporter and current editor-in-chief of BNE IntelliNews. Ben, good to see you. So Joe Biden's been on the phone to Vladimir Putin, but he's also sending 2 warships to the Black Sea. It's clearly a very volatile situation right now. Do you see any signs of it de-escalating in the near future?
Yes, it's very dramatic. The build-up of Russian troops on the border with Ukraine and the forces that the Russians have moved into the Crimea are the biggest troop movements and unscheduled troop movements, because there's no exercises scheduled for the moment, that we've seen since 2014. And of course, it's very worrying. However, the consensus is, talking amongst the Russian and the Ukrainian analysts, that no one seriously believes that this is going to come to blows, that the people on the ground are convinced this is all politics. It's signaling by the Kremlin to both the European Union and to the US that it's in a position to cause serious trouble if it gets hit with more sanctions. And that if you look at the numbers, your correspondent was reporting 80,000 troops. Other estimates have been lower, 40,000 have been quoted. But the Ukraine has a standing army of 250,000 men. And of course, since 2014, they've invested heavily into modernizing their army. So even 80,000 troops is actually not enough. It's a lot of soldiers, but it's not enough to invade Ukraine and particularly to hold it. They could probably take Kiev in a week, but there was no way they could hold it, because you'd have the partisan action and, of course, the political cost that would come if Russia were to actually cross the border with arms and tanks into Ukraine would be enormous. And I don't believe that, and most people don't believe that the Kremlin's prepared to do that. Having said that, the fact that invasion is highly unlikely, that doesn't mean that the situation is not extremely tense and that things could go wrong. And we're now in a position now where Biden has called Putin, somewhat surprisingly, in order to try and calm things down. And there's been calls from the EU and also from NATO for Russia to calm things down. The Russian side say that they're just responding to the Ukrainians, in so much as the spring is coming, the beginning of the campaign season is about to start. Ukraine has been rotating its troops out of the region and bringing in fresh ones and bringing up more and heavier artillery into the back of the line of contact. And Russia claims that it's just reacting to that. However, obviously,
clearly this has caused a lot of worry. Ukraine has asked NATO for help. NATO's Jens Stoltenberg has demanded that Russia draw down its military buildup. How should then NATO respond, or what measures can it take?
NATO can take no measures. The President Zelensky was last week calling for NATO to accelerate, or the European Union and the NATO allies to accelerate Ukraine's accession to the military alliance. However, Ukraine has not been invited, and for the Russians, that's an absolute red line. And if they were to invite Ukraine to join NATO, then I think it's a new game entirely, and then you could see military action in Ukraine, because the Russians have a bee in their bonnet about NATO expansion. And as Ukraine is not a member of NATO, then NATO actually cannot do anything. If NATO were to cross the border or even to commit troops on the Ukrainian side, then that would be an act of war as far as Russia's concerned. And again, you'd end up in Third World War.
Great analysis there, Ben. Thank you very much indeed. Ben Aris there in Berlin.